We are slaying monsters.
Don't let the ghosts and the ghouls disturb you, darling.
Is it EMF meters that do the electromagnetic energy?
Electromagnetic, yeah. Yeah, that's the thing that they always see. Yeah, those are always spiking, the EMF meters. I think they also call them Mel meters.
Oh,
but I don't know what Mel stands for.
I don't know what that means. Okay, well, anyway. It's interesting to me that it gathers so much electrical current, or whatever, I don't know, current energy, with the EMF meters are always spiking and spiking, and they're always able to capture these spirits with this electromagnetic energy.
Right.
My thinking is there needs to be a billionaire, not a billionaire, but a genius to come along and find a way to capture all of this free energy that's just floating around with all these ghosts and make sustainable energy. So, finally, really good sustainable energy.
So wait, what you're talking about is capturing somehow the electromagnetic energy that ghosts are allegedly giving off, according to ghost hunters.
Right.
And harnessing that and then using that as a power source to, I guess, transfer into regular energy and use it to power your Tesla or your house or whatever.
Yeah, anything you need.
So basically turning a ghost into a battery.
Basically, yes.
Okay.
I'm sure this might have been thought of. I'm sure this has been thought of before. I mean, honestly, the world is so, there's so many of us. I'm sure this idea has happened before, but I want to know, this would be proof of the paranormal to me. If they can, because we are a capitalistic society. If you can make money off of it, you will make money off of it. And I feel like if ghosts were real, we would have already been capitalizing on this energy and there would already be a billionaire ghost guy.
I think we need to stop talking about this right now because this has just become the Shark Tank idea.
Oh, this is our Shark Tank idea.
This is what we do.
Oh, okay.
Can't you see this? I almost want to go on as a parody of it and be no. So what you do is you capture the energy of the ghost and see if any of them are actually interested in going along with it.
Yeah,
I think it'd be kind of funny, actually.
I think it would be hilarious.
Yeah, you could do an EMF reading live on the show and be look at the spikes that we're getting on the Mel meter. Here they are. All we have to do is harness these, and then you just have some bullshit ghost box thing. Oh my god!
Ghostbusters
this
box.
This is such a good idea.
I know. I'm telling you, and we can commoditize this. Am I saying that right? Commoditize.
We'll make it into a commodity. Sure.
Yeah.
Commodify.
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 I don't know, but I like this.
Yeah.
This is good.
Yeah. I feel like this is a way to get rich.
Yeah.
It won't work. But it doesn't need to. This is the thing. What have we learned from Silas Newton or any of these other guys? It doesn't need to work. You just need to be able to sell it.
Yeah, it doesn't need to be real.
No, not at all.
We need to cut all this so that our future customers never hear this.
Yes.
This is inside baseball right now.
Right. Yeah, absolutely.
This
won't make it onto the show.
Make it onto the show.
Yotzi, cut this all out.
Yeah, Yotzi's our editor. But I really think that if ghosts were real, we'd be finding a way to capitalize on it.
You would think if they were legitimately producing that kind of energy, there would be a way to, maybe not capture exactly. I don't know exactly how it works, but yeah, if you have a device that is pinging and saying, okay, there is this energy frequency that's coming off of here, then it seems like there should be a way to backwards engineer that into something that could hold said energy.
Yeah.
It just makes sense.
If we have any electrical engineers listening.
And I know we have a ton.
I know we've got many. Let us know what you think. I'd like to know.
The thing is, I think that this was kind of the plot of Ghostbusters, though.
No, I know. I think so, too. I just don't think that they capitalized on it enough.
Well, no, they were just holding them and then it exploded. See, that is the problem. This is why Ghostbusters fucked up. Because they were just holding all of the ghosts, and so they were holding all that energy in Manhattan, or... Manhattan, right? The lower east side, I think.
I think so.
Where's the
It's Lower Manhattan.
Freedom Tower? Manhattan.
It's Lower Manhattan.
Yeah, Lower Manhattan. So they had all these ghosts in Lower Manhattan, and they weren't doing anything to siphon off that ghost energy. They were just holding them there. Of course, eventually the energy's going to blow up.
Right.
You had to slowly siphon that off. What's the best way to do it? Convert it into electromagnetic energy. Power your cars. Could have powered all of New York, I bet you.
Oh, yeah. Well, I mean, this is the difference between the 80s and now.
Yep.
I feel like we were more innocent back then. It was like, I have a ghost in a box. It's going to blow up. Blah, blah, blah. Today, be like, okay, let's make some money off of this.
How can this pay me?
Yeah.
How can the ghost pay me?
Exactly.
Right?
This is where we are right now in history. And where else are we? Well, we're here recording Slaying Monsters. This is what? Dybbuk Box number 2?
Dybbuk Box number 2.
Number 2! We got Matt across the table.
Hey.
And I'm EJ.
Yes.
And yeah.
Yeah, so...
take it away.
We are here. We're talking about the Dybbuk Box today, once again. Dybbuk Box, maybe ghosts, maybe evil spiritual energy, maybe just a load of hogwash. Mm-hmm. One of these things is true. We know, it kind of spans both, as happens a lot of times when you're talking about ghosts and ghost hunting. There's a very narrow line between just a dead person who's still hanging around and an evil spirit. It seems like when you are a paranormal investigator, you have to kind of be ready for all of that. Mm-hmm. It's like, let's see, it's like you're a hunter. No, it's like you're a fisher. I don't know. I don't even have a great comparison, but it's like you go out in the field ready for one thing, but you need to be ready for something else. It's like you're a carpenter, but you need to be ready to like deal with some electricity and wiring just in case you encounter it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, you're a jack of all trades, basically.
Kinda, yeah. Not necessarily all trades, but you need to at least be a little versed in it.
Sure. Right?
You had, I hate to say the name, but you had people like Ed Warren, who claimed to be a demonologist, but was really just a jackass charlatan, mm-hmm. who but he was the demonologist. And there's still people who follow in his tracks who are like, I'm a demonologist. I don't go after ghosts. I go after demons. And then you have people who are like, well, we specialize in ghosts. But still there's that overlap because the activity is so similar that you just never know.
Yeah. And there's always legitimacy brought into things when you specialize, even when legitimacy has no place.
Well, absolutely.
I mean, there's no place for it.
Yeah, it's I mean, I'm sure that there are people out there that specialize in poltergeist mm-hmm. too, instead of just regular ghosts and hauntings and mm-hmm. stuff. Even though at the end of the day, there's really, there's nothing there.
It's all just made up stuff. Yeah. But that's the fun thing I think about the Dead Files is when they're like, okay, you need to bring in a male medium.
Oh yeah, I love that stuff.
Yeah, a female exorcist.
Right, but and then
a shaman who owns 2 trucks. You need to bring these 3 people in, and that's the only way.
And it's this really specific recipe that you're like, mm-hmm. you need to bring in a female shaman, and she's going to do a smudging mm-hmm. throughout the entire house. And then you're going to bring in a male priest, and the male priest is going to read like recitations of something, and he's going to exorcise.
He's the only one that can get rid of the male energy in the house.
Yeah, and the female is going to like release it from the walls, but the male is the one who's actually going to drive it away or something.
Yeah, because it's a misogynist ghost and it won't listen to anybody but men. But this is what this specialization is very fascinating to me and fun. It's like, I don't know, it's like a more sophisticated version of make-believe.
Oh, absolutely, yeah. Yeah, I mean, anytime that you're kind of like LARPing, mm-hmm. doing all of this, you're just kind of making it up as you go along. Mm-hmm. You're telling the story, and you're inventing the characters and all of this shit, and you're like, okay, we're just making it all up. And anytime you can get more specific about that, mm-hmm. the better it is for that storytelling.
Yeah, and I mean, stack the cheddar, man. It's all about making that money too.
Well, before we jump into this, we had an email about night terrors as well, right?
Yeah, we did. We actually got a good email. Okay, the email is, hey guys, I was listening to your latest episode on the Dybbuk Box and sleep paralysis. I've experienced sleep paralysis a lot in my life, usually with hallucinations, so I've done a lot of reading up on it. In my own research, I've read that sleep paralysis that comes with hallucinations is not as common as regular sleep paralysis. Like, not everyone sees the demons or aliens, they just have the paralysis. Mm-hmm. Can you try and fact check that? Would love it if you could find the population percentages for those who experience sleep paralysis and any distinctions. Thanks so much.
Okay. Yeah, cool.
Yeah.
Well, thanks for that.
Yes, thank you for that.
I don't have numbers on the actual population percentage that experiences sleep paralysis, and especially like because I don't have those, I obviously don't have numbers on who experiences hallucinations versus who doesn't. I do know that just generally speaking, yes, the hallucinations are less common when it comes to the people who experience it. Because of this, we can get a little bit more technical with everything. So there's two types of hallucinations that you experience. I, in the last episode, lumped it all into what's called hypnagogic hallucinations, but there are technically hypnagogic hallucinations and hypnopompic hallucinations. And now hypnagogic hallucinations, that just means you're falling asleep. Hypnopompic hallucinations mean that you're waking up. So it's just different places along your sleep spectrum. Remember, there are the 4 different stages. Many people experience really quick hypnagogic hallucinations. That is when you are going to sleep and then you feel like you're falling for a second and you start yourself awake. Something like that. That's a hypnagogic hallucination. Hypnopompic is when you have already passed through REM sleep and you're on the other side, slowly waking up, but you're not fully awake yet. When it comes to sleep paralysis and the HAG and that kind of a hallucination that you're experiencing, we kind of colloquially consider that hypnagogic, not hypnopompic, but I have seen it classified as both. But colloquially, we tend to associate it more with hypnagogic hallucinations because you're going into the sleep cycle, not out of the sleep cycle when you experience it. Basically, in terms of why do some people experience that more than others, sometimes it's associated with like a mental disorder, but most of the time it's simply enough associated with stress.
So if you're more likely to be stressed, you're more likely to hallucinate.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah. And part of that is probably also that if you're stressed, you're more likely to have a disturbed sleep cycle to begin with.
Yeah.
Right? So if you're having stress or anxiety, PTSD, something like that, you're probably already having trouble falling asleep and staying asleep. And hypnagogic hallucinations and sleep paralysis are much more common in people with disturbed sleep cycles. That's why when you experience it, you tend to experience it on a very restless night of sleep. It's much less common for somebody who wakes up at the same time and falls asleep at the same time every day to have a sleep paralysis episode.
Makes sense. Thank you.
So I hopefully that answered your question.
Yeah. Thanks for writing in.
Yeah, thanks for that.
What's our freaking email address again?
slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com.
All right, cool.
Someone found it.
Yeah. Not me, because I can't remember.
Anyway, shall we jump into the Dybbuk Box here?
Yes, let's do it.
All right. So when we last saw the Dybbuk Box, it had been listed on eBay, you might remember. Now, its previous owner, Kevin Mannis, purchased it at an auction, but he had had a series of problems. His mother had a stroke, his business hit some bumps, and he has most recently been plagued by sleep paralysis and night terrors. All of that blamed on the box. In June of 2003, Kevin Mannis listed the box on eBay, and he included his long, very detailed account of all the happenings that were going on around it. And it sold almost immediately to a user who went by the name or the internet handle of Spasmolic. His real name was Yosef Netsky, a student at the University of Missouri. We don't have much more information on Netsky. Internet urban legends claim that he had a blog that has been long since deleted, but no one seems to have any more details about it. Charles Moss, in his article on Input Magazine, calls Netsky, quote, practically a ghost online. What's strange about that to me is that blog apparently contained details of Netsky's misfortunes while he owned the Dybbuk Box. And given the very extensive research by its later owners, it's really, really odd that something as critical as this second source, you have Kevin Mannis, now Netsky, it just kind of disappeared and was never archived in any way. It's possible that he didn't exist at all, or it's possible that that blog was a fabrication that came later. The story of him having that blog.
Okay. So if he didn't exist, then somebody must have created him.
Possibly. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, I don't know.
That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't know.
Okay. All right.
So either way, this student paid $140 for this old wine cabinet with a bad reputation. Mm-hmm. And he kept it for less than a year before relisting it on eBay, claiming that sometimes it had strange odors and that his roommates had been having trouble sleeping. He also claimed that he was having car trouble, which I don't know if that was associated with the box or not. But
I want to get one of these boxes and blame all of
it's
this
just
stuff.
all of your bad shit. You're like, I stubbed my toe. Shit.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that smell, that's the box. That is not because I haven't bathed in a couple of days.
Yeah, I think all of these people just had cats and the cats kept peeing.
Yeah. Or farting like our kitten.
Oh, God, she's so nasty.
Oh, she's so nasty.
Niecki concluded this list of grievances by saying, anyhow, for personal reasons, I very strongly do not want this box anymore. I hope there's someone on eBay that will take this thing off my hands. I would just throw it away in the woods or something, but I know that there has been some interest in it in the past.
Aw, I see this like 90s era type film where there's the little boy trying to get rid of his dog. And it's like, go away.
He just puts it in the woods and walks away and is like, no, stay.
You stay.
Throws a rock at it.
Yeah, throws a rock at it. Why are you staring at me like that?
As luck would have it, one of Niecki's sleep-deprived roommates had some connections. And this unnamed roommate was a student and work-study fellow of Jason Haxton, a museum director. In a burst of entrepreneurial spirit, Niecki sold the box to Haxton for $280, doubling the money that he spent on it.
Nice.
Already, the Dybbuk Box is gaining a reputation and becoming a little bit of a moneymaker. Mm-hmm. Haxton and the roommate worked at the A.T. Still University in Kirksville, Missouri, the world's first osteopathic medical school. Haxton served as the museum director, managing the Museum of Osteopathic Medicine. EJ, what do you know about osteopathic medicine?
I really don't know a whole lot, honestly.
Buckle up.
Awesome.
It doesn't directly feed into this story, but I think it's important because Jason Haxton is the source of a lot of the ongoing investigation into the Dybbuk Box. And I think you have to understand the way that Haxton's mind works. Mm-hmm. And in order to understand that, let's understand where he worked and what he bought into.
Yeah, that's actually that'd be really good to know. Yeah.
Also, I think it's worth pointing out before we jump into this, we're gonna talk about Haxton's point of view when it comes to the unknown and the unusual and all of that. Mm-hmm. And I do understand that Haxton working at the museum does not necessarily mean that Haxton bought into the ideals of the museum. Mm-hmm. However, it's worth pointing out that Haxton in 2016 ends up writing a book that is a biography on A.T. Still, the founder of osteopathic medicine. So to some extent, Haxton was at least pretty deeply entrenched with the practice.
Yeah. Okay.
Let's talk about Andrew Taylor Still, the A.T. Still from the museum. Born in 1828, Still was the son of a Methodist minister and physician living in Virginia. He learned medicine from his father before enlisting for the Union in the Civil War. And during the war, he served as a hospital steward for Company F of the Cass County Home Guard of Mississippi Cavalry. As a hospital steward, you know what that is? Hospital steward? What that would be considered?
No, actually.
He was kind of like a physician's assistant / nurse.
Okay.
He and a pharmacist too, sort of. He tended to the patients. He restocked supplies. He filled prescriptions for them. In his autobiography, he called himself a, quote, de facto surgeon, which is a bit like calling the IT support at Charles Schwab a de facto stock trader. Just because you clean the instruments doesn't mean that they trust you to use them.
I gotta say though, man, back in the day, anybody could probably be a surgeon.
I mean, I guess so. I don't know if we talked about it before, but on during the age of the sail, the ship's carpenter was also the surgeon because it was all just about cutting.
Right. Right. And weren't dentists also surgeons back in the times of the
Yes. Yeah.
Wild West? Yeah.
Yeah.
Anything goes. Okay.
So, Still cites himself as a medical doctor, but there's no record of him ever earning an MD, not even his claimed de facto one. Nevertheless, he had been around medicine his whole life, which made it all the more painful when he lost 3 of his children to spinal meningitis. Frustrated with the traditional medicine of the day, which he deemed ineffective and sometimes downright harmful, Still turned to more experimental practices instead. So to place this in time, we're talking about the late 1860s. We have the Fox sisters, they're touring the northern states, they're promoting spiritualism. I don't know if Still encountered them personally, but we do know from his letters that he was very intrigued by the ideas that they were presenting to the world, and that spiritualism had a, quote, prominent place in his thinking, according to him. And this is also the time of Mesmer's followers. You remember Mesmer? He had all of his magnetic fluid malarkey that he was talking about,
Yes.
right? He claimed that he could wave his hands around your body and magnetically move the fluids inside you around.
Wow. Amazing.
And you might remember that was easily debunked by Ben Franklin and a team of real doctors in France. But as we see time and time again, these little factions of pseudoscience keep popping up, and they influence the spiritualist thinking of the day. And if you want to go even deeper into weird mystical bullshit that surrounds these medical practices, I suggest checking out episode 2 of our Fox Sisters series, where I rant on mesmerism and I rant on Reiki.
He gets all fired up.
I got fired up. So A.T. Still held on to his fanciful beliefs. And he tried a bunch of different alternative techniques, from hydrotherapy to chiropractic techniques to Mesmer's magnetic hand-wavy bullshit. And his conclusion from doing all this quackery was that the human body's bone and connective tissue conduct an energy or life force that can heal itself.
Okay.
Kind of like Wolverine, but magical.
Okay, so magical. So not like I cut myself and the body heals.
No.
Naturally.
No, like I shoot you and your body will heal it if you like know how to manipulate the bones and tissue and all of that shit.
Okay.
The notion of magical energy in the body is sometimes called vitalism. I don't know if you've heard this before.
No.
Okay. This is a like alternative medicine buzzword, vitalism. Completely rejected by real medical science. For good reason, too. A Yale School of Medicine clinical neurologist, Dr. Stephen Novella, writing for his blog Science-Based Medicine, states, "The notion of a life force was always a placeholder for our own ignorance and was discarded by medicine once we learned how biology actually works. No life force has ever been discovered by science, and there is no plausible mechanism for such a force. There is also no evidence for tying the bones to healing in the way imagined by Still." Despite the clear nonsense of vitalism, which should have been treated exactly like mesmerism and rejected outright, that is still the basis for a lot of alternative medicine practices, like chiropractic medicine.
So I'm sorry. So let's go back a little bit.
Yeah.
In his thinking, if I were to stab him in the shoulder,
Yes.
he could just use his magical life force energy to fix it. Or does he actually then use real medicine because it's life-threatening?
He would use life force energy, and I believe A.T. Still would say that you had created a rift in his life force, and so he would need to sew that rift using energy either from himself or from another medical practitioner.
But there would be no actual medical intervention in the form of, let's stop bleeding, let's sew this up, let's hope that, give you antibiotics.
You're using an extreme example, but yes. Yes. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
That's the concept, basically. When we're talking about this, we're not really talking about gunshot wounds. We're talking about more things. Like, remember, his children died from spinal meningitis.
Yeah,
right.
It's terrible.
So he's talking more. We're going to heal conditions where a trauma is not necessarily a condition.
Okay.
So as opposed to if you fall off a ladder.
Mm-hmm.
And you hit your head and you're bleeding, I think that he would still be in favor of put a bandage on it. But if you now suffered headaches, vertigo, and dizziness, he would say, oh, clearly your life force energy got altered by this, and I'm going to use my energy to help you fix that.
So it's a different tool, basically.
Yeah, alternative medicine, there are always some extreme examples where people try to cure like cancer with alternative medicine or something like that.
Or there's a Christian belief too, I think it's Christian Scientist, where they eschew all medical intervention.
That's sort of a different thing because that comes from God, not from the human.
Right. But
Vitalism is human-based.
Right, yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
That's different. But it reminds me of that, of just
for sure. Yeah.
not using any intervention. Okay.
Yeah. But a lot of alternative medicine is always preys on these. They're not life-threatening. Mm-hmm. They're not like a critical condition. This person's bleeding out. I'm not sure anyone would try to heal somebody with an axe wound with chiropractic medicine.
Yeah.
But if you are having some type of spinal issue or, you have constant headaches, you have celiac disease, you have something like that, we try to treat, I shouldn't say we, alternative medicine doctors try to treat that with this quackery instead of trying to treat it with actual medical science. It's always the stuff that's not quite in your face. Aggressive,
like less acute conditions. Like
yes,
I feel like
always latent conditions.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
So this like unfounded idea of this life force powering our bodies, to me, has always sounded like it's straight out of a video game, sort of. Mm-hmm. But despite what video games have taught me, you can't really just heal a gunshot wound by eating a slice of pizza. And when it comes to alternative medicine, wiggling your bones around isn't going to cure cancer or depression or any other kind of disease except maybe a pulled muscle. But I can see how the idea of a self-repairing body, which utilized a mystical and natural energy source, could be very easily integrated into Still's own view of the world. Now remember, his father was a minister and a surgeon, preaching God's power and then saving lives by his own hand. I don't think it's a stretch to see that Still was questing for some type of metaphysical understanding in his own practice that bridged religion and modern science. Mm-hmm. And again, just in case you forgot, Still never got a medical degree and lied about his credentials.
Oh, all these guys are like that.
Yeah.
He's just another one.
He never got one. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Oh my God.
But that didn't stop him from founding his own school for osteopathy in 1892. That's the A.T. Still University, which we'll be returning to in just a minute. This school and Still's entire mystical approach to medicine goes on to be co-opted by Daniel David Palmer and used as the blueprint for chiropractic medicine. Again, working off this idea of vitalism. And yeah, chiropractors of today are still working off a flawed, widely discredited system based on an unlicensed pseudo-religious liar who was himself working off a scam artist who claimed humans are magnetic.
All right, it boils it down.
Basis of all of it. By the way, I'm not done yet. By the way, if you really want to hear how bullshit chiropractic techniques are, look no further than the founder himself, Daniel D. Palmer. As quoted in Joseph Keating's D.D. Palmer Lifeline, when he was brought before a jury for practicing without a license, Palmer not only confirmed that he was unlicensed, but explained that, quote, His profession had nothing to do with medicine, that he healed by the laying on of hands, that he had a diploma from no earthly school, but from high heaven.
Ooh, I want to put my neck in that man's hands for sure.
I love this idea. I got a diploma from God.
Yeah. Oh, man.
Palmer himself even considered forming a religion so he could continue practicing without a fucking license.
Well, that's American ingenuity, Matt. I mean, that's just what you do.
This is the ghost thing again. Let's see how we can make money off of it.
Yeah, and it's like how can we get around the legal system?
Exactly.
Well, I'm going to say it's not medical. It's
religious.
It's spiritual. It's religious. Whether he believed that to be true or not,
yeah,
he found a way around it.
Well, he didn't actually do that.
Oh.
He didn't make it a religion because his son actually hit on the idea of founding a school.
Okay. I'm not saying he made it a religion. I don't think he did. I'm just saying for the argument of the trial, he was very smart.
Oh, yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he was like, no, I don't have a degree. My degree was given to me by God.
Exactly.
So Palmer's son, B.J. Palmer, decided, we should found a school and then we can give out our own degrees. B.J. Palmer would later explain that the institution, the chiropractic school that they founded, was, and this is a quote from him, a business, not a professional basis. We manufacture chiropractors. We teach them the idea and then we show them how to sell it.
Wow.
And when I read shit like this, I think no wonder everyone is afraid of doctors hawking medical treatments for a quick buck. Because that is what fucking alternative medicine has been doing for decades and decades, basically a century or more. Now, there's a silver lining in osteopathic medicine. Dr. Stephen Novella writes that most osteopathic doctors end up in the same internships and residences that real medical doctors do. And he points out that that's where you really learn your profession. In Dr. Novella's experience, corroborated by John Snyder of Tufts University School of Medicine, most doctors of osteopathic medicine end up rejecting their metaphysical roots and transition to modern medical science after their residence.
Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah. Yeah, because you know what happens is they are raised up with this kind of metaphysical laying on hands bullshit foundation. And then they go and they do years of residence somewhere and they find out that all of that shit doesn't work. And then they learn real medicine during their residency and they continue that.
That's a really good argument for having alternative medicine enmeshed in legitimate. I mean, it isn't. It's scary, right? Ooh, I just said something that scares me.
I don't know about that.
That scares me actually. So, but it works for osteopathy.
Yeah, and I mean, I'm sure that there are some chiropractors out there that were trained as chiropractors but have transitioned to being just physical therapists as well. I'm not sure you should ever allow bullshit to be sold at the same level as regular real medicine. I think it's dangerous personally.
Yeah, I mean, saying that made me nervous. So I don't know if I'm making this up, but I see sometimes some hospitals that have alternative medicine in them.
Oh, they're all over the place. Yeah.
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 Like as an option.
Oh yeah. Yeah, there are plenty of places where hospitals will have alternative medicine solutions, and you can go and you can have a surgery and they'll give you a heart transplant, but then you can also go and get like acupuncture to help you heal. And just to be clear, acupuncture will not help you heal, but they will do that. They will offer that as an option. But I think that's bad. I don't think, because ultimately there has to be someone from a higher level who is looking down and who is reviewing all of this stuff and saying what works and what doesn't. And if you don't have that, if you don't have somebody who's like, yo, this works, this and this is clearly bullshit, then you're going to end up with people like sticking leeches on you again or drilling into your brain or fucking whatever. It can be really dangerous, because even though alternative medicine doesn't always treat extremely dangerous conditions? Sometimes it does.
Sometimes it's a substitute.
Yeah.
People choose it as a substitute.
Yeah, sometimes people try to cure their cancer with chiropractic or fucking
Acupuncture
tinctures or
whatever,
fucking whatever, right? And it doesn't work. Or you have people who know enough to be dangerous, but not enough to actually help. Mm-hmm. And so you end up with chiropractors who were trained to manipulate spines and joints and that kind of shit, who cause long-lasting, sometimes permanent, sometimes fatal damage to someone because they don't know what they're fucking doing. Mm-hmm. I think it's dangerous.
Yeah.
As much as it's cool to kind of stack them up against each other and be like, oh, which one wins? Mm-hmm. You should not be putting them on the same level as legitimate medical science. I think that it gives them too much credibility. Mm-hmm. Fundamental supernatural practices are still taught in osteopathic institutions. Which brings us back to the A.T. Still University and museum director Jason Haxton, who purchased a cursed wine cabinet for $280, or double its cost. He admits that he was goaded on by Michael Callahan, who worked admissions at the school. And this is according to the Riverfront Times article, Devil's Wine Box, that was written up on them. Callahan, cool dude, he did magic on the side, incorporating ghosts and supernatural tales into his acts, like the spiritualists of old.
Cool.
And he was also a really big fan of Penn and Teller, whose skeptical debunking show, Bullshit, kind of followed in the style of James Randi and Harry Houdini, trying to expose pseudoscience, paranormal, and misunderstood topics that way. When the box arrived, Callahan, the magician, was there when they opened it, and he remembers how creepy seeing the enclosed artifacts were. You remember there's the candlestick holder and locks of hair and stuff. And Callahan said, those artifacts are linked to real people. And it was disturbing for him. According to Haxton, as soon as he got the box, things started going wrong. Just touching the box, caused a burning sensation in his hands. He brought the box back to his house and showed it to his family. I'm sure they were just thrilled by it. But soon, he started developing medical problems like stomach pain, hives, and he would have choking attacks. Mm-hmm. It was almost as if he was having an allergic reaction to something. Mm-hmm. So he had the box tested to make sure there wasn't any type of unusual chemical finish used on the wood. All the tests came back negative. Still, his health continued to suffer. Soon, he was plagued by dreams of a sunken-eyed woman who was stalking him at night.
Cool.
Yeah. As time went on, Haxton, he developed dry eyes as well, which got so bad that his eyes were constantly bloodshot all throughout the day. The odor of cat urine appeared again, sometimes inside the box and sometimes just drifting around his house. And that was sometimes interrupted by the sweet smell of jasmine. Despite his access to a wealth of osteopathic medicine, Haxton couldn't solve his medical issues. He began to suspect that the curse of the Dybbuk Box was real and that he had inadvertently fallen victim to it and possibly put his life in jeopardy. And you can kind of see how, if you're already of the established belief that there are magical energies that can heal your body, there may also be magical energies that can harm your body.
Oh, for sure.
And how this isn't that much of a leap for him. But still, he's a museum director, so he's something of an academic. And he dove into research, kind of hoping to find the origins of the box and some kind of explanation for all these supernatural events that surrounded it. He's the first person to do it so far. By the way, the Callahan, the magician skeptic, he kept the box in his home for a week with no ill effects.
The box liked him.
I guess so. He countered Haxton's claims by saying, absolutely nothing ever happened. We never saw, smelled, heard, or had anything negative. If anything, our lives have been surprisingly good. If he gets to have his opinion and say it's all real, I get to have my opinion and say it's a scam. I love this guy.
I like him, yeah.
Nevertheless, Haxton pushed forward. He used the story of a Jewish immigrant that was part of the eBay listing as a jumping off point, which led him to an incredibly dark period in American history. But before we get there, we need to head to Germany in the 1930s, which is just...
Not where you want to be.
Not where you want to be.
Yeah.
Okay, so Germany 1930s. Hitler has been appointed chancellor in 1933, and he would spend the next 5 years enacting increasingly anti-Semitic laws. By 1935, the Nuremberg laws stripped the Jews' rights to citizenship and forbid them from marrying non-Jews. In 1938, Germany canceled the residence permits for foreigners. And simultaneously with that, Poland renounced citizenship of Polish Jews who were living in other countries. So if you were a Polish Jew and you were living in, say, France, you just got your citizenship renounced.
Wow, so you had no citizenship,
Correct.
basically.
Yeah.
Wow. I didn't know that about Poland.
Mm-hmm.
I always see them as like victims of World War II and not like the people, yes, but the government, I kind of didn't know the government was doing that kind of stuff, I guess.
We're going to talk about this. This is a very weird time in history. There was a lot of ignorance and latent hate going on all throughout the world.
Well, that's no different from now. I mean, you're watching Europe become more and more right-leaning
Yeah,
every year. It's very scary.
And it's a very similar environment as to the how we look at immigration right now, and how there's a lot of people. It's very, very similar, man. There's a lot of governments that are like, look, we don't want these immigrants. We're not gonna convict them. We're not gonna arrest them. We're not gonna do this stuff. But we're also not gonna let them come into our country.
Right. It's like we it's not that we don't like them. It's
Right.
just that we don't want them to be living among us.
Yes. Yeah, I got no problem with them. Just don't come live here.
Just don't. Yeah. Just stay behind that frickin' line. You know.
That's exactly what was going on in Poland, and as we'll see in other countries.
Yeah, and that leads to nothing. But I'm not even going to be sarcastic. I mean, that's just a terrible, terrible policy. And yeah, we're seeing it play out now, and it's fucking horrifying.
It's really disturbing. It was really disturbing when I was doing the research for this series and getting into some of this stuff, and just kind of realizing, like, oh wow, history is literally repeating itself once again.
Yes.
You know, this is a serious topic.
Yes, it is.
And I'm sorry that we have to talk about this, but we have to talk about this.
Yeah, we'll get back to ghosts and acupuncture later, I promise.
Ghosts will be popping up.
Okay.
Okay. So Poland has renounced citizenship of Polish Jews. Germany canceled residence permits. This left an entire population of Polish Jews in Germany effectively stateless. They can't stay in Germany because Germany's evicting them, but they can't go back to Poland because they're not actually Polish, at least according to the Poland government.
Yeah.
So the Nazis began a mass deportation effort, dumping the Jews on the Polish border. And Polish border guards sent them right back to Germany.
Oh my God.
So you had 8,000 Jews, penniless, homeless, forced into refugee camps on the border between the countries.
Man.
Among these refugees were Sendel and Riva Grinspan, two Polish Jews forced to live between these two countries without belonging to either one. They wrote their struggles in a postcard to their son, Herschel, who was living in Paris. Herschel, 17 at the time, was understandably distraught over his family's plight and felt powerless being trapped so far from them. 4 days after receiving the postcard, he bought a revolver and a box of ammunition and went to the German embassy in France. The current secretary of the embassy was Ernest von Rath, who had expressed that anti-Jew laws were necessary for the success of Germany. But von Rath also wasn't a fan of the Nazis and was actually under Gestapo investigation for being unreliable. He was a conflicted man in more ways than one. According to the German historian Hans-Jürgen Dorscher, vom Rath was gay. Rumors called him Madame Ambassador and Notre Dame de Paris.
How clever.
Which is actually a really great drag name. Not that I'm saying that he wore drag, but it's a great drag name.
That's a really good
Notre
drag
Dame de Paris.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Huh.
Dorscher, the historian, believes that vom Rath and Herschel Grünspan had met previously at a gay cabaret in Paris and may have become lovers. That club, by the way, is the one that the musical Cabaret is based on.
No way.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Ooh, that's cool. Okay.
On the morning of Monday, November 7th, 1938, Grünspan stepped into vom Rath's office, produced his revolver, and fired 5 times, hitting vom Rath twice in the abdomen. He then surrendered to the authorities. Grünspan carried a note for his parents saying, "May God forgive me. I must protest so that the whole world hears my protest, and that I will do." Hitler shipped 2 of his head doctors to Paris, but their efforts were in vain, and vom Rath died 2 days later. News of his death left Hitler so distraught that he walked out of a dinner party.
I'm sorry, just talking about Hitler being distraught is comical to me. I know. Because he's such a monster. I'm like,
it's hard, right?
I know.
But you're like, oh, poor Hitler.
Poor Hitler. He had to leave a dinner party?
Oh, no. So, okay, since you have said that, and as we continue on, I am not entirely convinced that Hitler was truly emotionally distraught. It may have been a calculated effort to shift the winds of the political climate.
Oh, okay.
Because who was also at that dinner party but Joseph Goebbels, the Minister of Propaganda. And he took the opportunity at that dinner party to deliver a speech on the shooting, and he urged the assembled Nazi leaders to retaliate with violence on all the Jewish people.
Oh boy, so it was a very convenient opportunity for them.
Hitler may have truly been distraught by it, or Hitler may have said, this is how the whole thing's going to go down.
Yeah.
I'm going to pretend to be really upset. You're going to step in and you're going to execute this for me. Heinrich Müller, the leader of the SS police, ordered the SS, stormtroopers, and the Hitler Youth to raid Jewish businesses that very evening. They were instructed to arrest and detain, quote, healthy male Jews who are not too old, who would later be moved to concentration camps. 7,500 businesses and storefronts were destroyed in showers of broken glass and hate. Dubbed the Kristallnacht, or the Night of Broken Glass, Nazi police and German citizens rioted, and any Jews who attempted to intervene were arrested immediately. Any Jewish person who owned or possessed a weapon was arrested on the spot, whether they were using it or not. The punishment was a 20-year prison sentence.
Holy fuck.
267 synagogues were burned as well, some of them centuries old.
Ugh.
Archives like prayer books and texts were burned. Over 30,000 Jewish men were arrested. The Daily Telegraph reported, mob law ruled in Berlin throughout the afternoon and evening, and hordes of hooligans indulged in an orgy of destruction. I have seen several anti-Jewish outbreaks in Germany during the last 5 years, but never anything as nauseating as this. Racial hatred and hysteria seem to have taken complete hold of otherwise decent people. I saw fashionably dressed women clapping their hands and screaming with glee, while respectable middle-class mothers held up their babies to see the fun.
What the fuck?
Yeah. It's really goes to show how that mob rule can just take off.
Yeah.
And how, I'm not saying it's the same thing, but I've been part of protests in the last decade or so. And there is kind of the protest itself kind of takes on a mind and a passion of its own. And it is easy to get swept up in that and lose lose sight that the people on the other side are people. You know?
I'm sure you never think this, but like you're just saying, like hypothetically, like you can. Yeah, I think though, I don't think good people become assholes in a mob. I think you have it in you.
I don't think so.
I think it's in you or not. Like you're either a racist dick or you're not. Like these people had it in them to be racist and anti-Semitic,
and they were cultured. And I mean, look, the origins of World War II are way too vast for us to talk about on this podcast, but you know, it was very cultured in them. That hate was developed through years of indoctrination. Yeah. Kaiser Wilhelm, the last German emperor, spoke on the riots and said, "For the first time, I am ashamed to be German."
Wow, no way.
Kristallnacht was a turning point for Nazi Germany. This shifted focus, changing from deporting Jews and stealing their possessions to outright violence against them. Mass imprisonment and destruction became the norm. And the uncanny thing about it is the question of motive. Herschel Greenspan claimed that Ernest von Rath had essentially promised him French citizenship in exchange for sex, and had intended to hand off Greenspan to the German diplomats as a sex worker.
Whoa.
It's unclear how much of this is actually true and how much of his own sexuality. The whole thing is murky. It's possible that he was motivated by his parents' details of their detainment camp, but it could also have been, as Hans-Jürgen Dorscher believes, a lover's quarrel. No matter what. This singular incident, the shooting of von Rath, was more than enough motivation for the Nazis to escalate their assault on the Jewish people. Not only did the shooting provide sound reasoning for retaliation, allowing the riots and hostility to escalate, that turned people's attention away from the claims of homosexuality, which would have been extremely detrimental to the Nazis' efforts. Because if the claims of homosexuality were true, that meant von Rath was not only gay, but was also in a relationship with a Jew, the very same people that the Nazis were trying to eradicate from their country.
So it was tactically important for them to make this completely political.
Extremely.
Yeah.
Yes. It should come as no surprise that many of the remaining Jews in Germany sought to escape the violence. In May of 1939, the passenger ship MS St. Louis set sail from Hamburg en route to Havana. Aboard were almost 1,000 Jewish refugees who had obtained Cuban visas. But when they arrived in Havana after their 2-week trip, they found the country closed to them. Cuba had recently changed their immigration policies and were no longer accepting visas. They allowed only 22 Jews to remain in Havana. American Secretary of State Cordell Hull tried to persuade Cuban President Batista to accept more, but his efforts fell on deaf ears. Desperate, the St. Louis set sail for Florida, but the U.S. Coast Guard intercepted and detained them, refusing to let them come ashore. And despite Secretary Hull's efforts in getting President Batista to change his mind, he had a decidedly different approach when it came to his own country being in the same spot.
Jeez.
Hull refused to accept the immigrants, and President Franklin Delano Roosevelt backed him up, and the St. Louis ultimately left the U.S. waters. Frederick Blair, Canada's immigration director, also refused to take the refugees. The St. Louis captain, Gustav Schroeder, refused to be deterred, and he threatened to run the St. Louis aground on British soil unless the government accepted their refugees. Prime Minister Neville Chamberlain agreed to negotiate the transfer of 300 of the refugees.
Oh my God, only 300?
Only 300. So you had 22 in Havana and 300 in Britain. They were offloaded in Antwerp, Belgium, after a tense negotiation from Captain Schroeder. Those 300. The remaining 600 passengers were distributed across France, Belgium, and the Netherlands, all countries that would be heavily involved in Germany's war effort a few years later. It's estimated that of the 937 refugees who originally set sail, about 250 died during the Holocaust. Had Cuba, America, Canada, or Britain accepted the refugees instead, all would likely have survived. That tragic cruise became known as the Voyage of the Damned. And aboard that ship, according to Jason Haxton's research, was a girl named Havilah. After being denied entry into the Americas, she was granted asylum in Belgium and later fled to Spain, where she acquired a wine cabinet. And that cabinet now sat in Haxton's living room, infecting the air with vile energy. At least according to him.
That is so fascinating.
It's a difficult
Yeah.
and important time in world history.
Yeah. I mean, it's not something that you really learn about normally. The
No.
Voyage of the Damned.
No. Well, and
It's very sad.
one of the things that gets me, and we're going to go even deeper into this in a minute, but one of the things that gets me is that there were an awful lot of people who, again, they didn't necessarily have a problem with the Jews, but they didn't want them to come to their country.
See, that's the thing. Like they were willing to kind of pressure other people to take them, but then when it came to
It's incredible.
my
Yeah.
country, oh no,
Hull, who was like, "Yo, Cuba, you should take these guys," and Cuba's like, "We're not taking them," and then they're like, "Oh, you were pressuring him, so can we offload in Florida?" And he's like, "No,
Cuba took 22 and the U.S. took 0.
took 0." Yeah.
What an asshole!
Mm-hmm.
I mean, seriously, they're all assholes. It's just, oh my god. I don't know. I don't have any words for it. It's just disgusting.
It's disgusting.
Yeah.
There's more disgusting to come.
Oh, great.
But first, let's talk about some ghosts. So Haxton believed that the negative energy surrounding Kristallnacht and the Voyage of the Damned, and ultimately Havilah's life, dodging the Nazis, all contributed to the power of the Dybbuk Box. Now, for the record, we do have the passenger list from the St. Louis, and there have been several attempts to locate its descendants. It's unclear if there was ever a Havilah among them, although, as we will eventually see, it wouldn't really matter if there was.
Oh, okay.
Haxton launched a blog sometime around 2006, now 3 years after the box first surfaced, where he began cataloging his research on the Dybbuk Box, although he used the spelling D-I-B-B-U-K instead of D-Y-B-B-U-K. He was able to date the construction to the 1960s in a Swedish cabinetry style. Puzzlingly, the cabinet is too small for a wine bottle, which led Haxton to believe that it may have contained Jewish scrolls or religious books like the Torah. The truth is that the cabinet was supposed to contain a specially sized decanter, which was missing from it. The wine goblet contained in the box was a Leonard Company silver-plated double jigger. Haxton notes that he's only been able to locate similar cups in Oregon. It's worth noting that Kevin Manis was based out of Oregon.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Right.
The octopus-legged candle holder was made by the Peking Glass Company between 1890 and 1910.
Cool.
The inscribed stone statue might have been a piece of a headstone or just a random chunk of granite. According to Haxton, the reason he associated the story of the MS St. Louis with Havilah and the Dybbuk Box was all about proximity. This is what we would call synchronicity. Remember when the U.S. turned the ship away?
How could I forget?
What a great time.
Yeah.
One of the contributing constituents, a Harry Hamilton Laughlin, lived within sight of the dorms at the A.T. Still University. And Laughlin was a major influence on the eugenics movement that paved the way for Hitler's Aryan race.
Ugh.
And in case that doesn't just cement the message of how much of a piece of shit this guy was, Laughlin, right? Let's talk about the Eugenics Record Office in New York, where Laughlin served as a director. While there, Laughlin falsified evidence to show that there was excessive insanity in immigrants from Southern and Eastern Europe and claimed that Jews were born feeble-minded.
Oh my god. This guy was in New York doing this shit like he had an actual office?
The Eugenics Record Office.
Disgusting. Oh my God.
His bullshit, cherry-picked reports were enough to sway American Congress, who passed a radical immigration act in 1924 called the Johnson-Reed Act. You ever heard of this?
No.
Okay. This act prevented immigration from Asia into the US and set restrictions on how many Southern and Eastern Europeans could enter the country. The Johnson-Reed Act was a major contributing factor to the Asian hate and bigotry that would last for decades, and in fact, was one of the reasons that Japan attacked Pearl Harbor.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, please elaborate.
According to David C. Atkinson, on the Japanese government's perception of the act, quote, "This indignity, the Johnson-Reed Act, is seen as a turning point in the growing estrangement of the US and Japan, which culminated in the 1941 attack on Pearl Harbor."
Okay.
So if it maybe not a direct reason for the attack on Pearl Harbor, but certainly another wedge or another brick in the wall separating the two powers.
Certainly, yeah. That makes sense.
By 1922, Laughlin had published the Model Eugenical Sterilization Law, a blueprint which encouraged forced sterilization of what he called unfit members of the U.S. population. You want to guess who they were?
Oh, fuck.
Unfit members?
Okay, I'm just going to say probably anybody who is an Anglo straight. Let's see, that's pretty much it, I imagine.
It's huge. It's more than you think. So obviously it included Jews and Asians, because he really hated them. But also, this is a quote, "The feeble-minded, the insane, criminals, epileptics, alcoholics, blind people, deaf persons, deformed persons, and indignant persons."
Indignant?
Yes. He might as well have just said, "everyone I don't like."
He basically should have. What a cock.
If you ever need to check and see if you're an asshole, just ask if Hitler likes what you do. Because Hitler fucking loved Harry Hamilton Laughlin. In his biography, Laughlin's biography, The American Breed by Paul Lombardo, Laughlin is described as, quote, "among the most racist and anti-Semitic of the early 20th century eugenicists."
Oh, he sounds like it. I mean, okay, you have to be racist to be a eugenicist.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
So he was like top of the pile.
Yes, to be the most
The
racist
most.
eugenicist.
That's extreme.
Yeah. And yeah, this piece of shit was able to lobby the government into borrowing a ship of Jewish immigrants fleeing arrest and death from their own country.
So he was behind the stopping of that, basically.
He lobbied.
He
Yes.
lobbied for it, yeah.
So maybe that's why the Dybbuk Box was so pissed off, or at least that's what Haxton thought. And at this point, I'm kind of on the side of the cursed wine cabinet, because fuck that guy.
Yeah. If only the wine cabinet had fallen into his hands at the time.
Yeah, seriously. Seriously.
That would have been nice.
In Haxton's mind, the recurring themes of racial oppression and hatred, wrapped up in the curses and punishment on the cabinet's owners, must have had something to do with the atrocities inflicted on the victims of the Holocaust. But he couldn't quite get the threads to meet. So, intent on tracking down whatever leads he could, he arranged a trip to Oregon to visit Kevin Mannis, the original buyer. Now, according to Haxton's blog, archived from 2006, Mannis must have been doing his own research too. And I get the sense that when Mannis, even after he sold the box, I mean, you don't forget something like that, right? Like, he couldn't quite get the idea out of his mind. What the fuck was this thing that I owned that caused me so much misfortune? He did some digging locally, and he found Havala lived to 103 years old. While in Poland, before fleeing to Spain, she took up an unusual hobby. You want to guess what that was?
Building wine boxes.
She conducted seances.
Okay.
According to Mannis's research, Havala and her family had a spirit on call who they would regularly communicate with. As their relationship with this unnamed spirit developed, it became restless and more and more restless, and it began asking them to perform a very specific ritual to bring it into the world permanently. Not a good idea. Never a good idea.
Don't do those things.
Havilah, to her credit, was initially apprehensive, and her apprehension made the spirit angry. It began tormenting her and her family. In the process of this, it would break glasses and light bulbs and make them ill. Havilah knew that she had to do something, so she hatched a plan to perform the ritual, but then trap the spirit once it reached our side, thereby crippling its abilities and getting rid of it for good. They tried to perform this ritual on the evening of November 9th, 1938, but something went catastrophically wrong. Straight out of Supernatural right here.
Yeah.
No one knows if they performed the ritual wrong or if the spirit found out they were trying to do it and, outsmarted them. But the trap failed and the spirit burst forth into our world. Unleashed on Kristallnacht, it let loose its fury with its favorite pastime, breaking glass. Havilah became distraught, positive that she and her occult experiment were responsible for the atrocities inflicted on her own people.
Whoa, who's making this story up? Who's telling the story?
This is what Kevin Mannis has learned.
Okay.
In his research.
Okay.
Go with me.
I'm going with you.
Go with me.
Okay.
For years, Havilah studied the Kabbalistic texts, trying to learn how to track down the malicious spirit she'd released on Earth. You remember the texts of the Kabbalah from the last episode. These are the kind of esoteric, mystical Jewish texts that are kept in the dark corners, right?
So cool.
After nearly 3 decades of work and research, she was able to reunite with the surviving members of her spiritualist group in Spain. Working together, they managed to catch and trap the spirit in a religious cabinet. Still blaming herself for the demonic actions of the Nazis, Havilah swore to protect the box with her life and demanded, "I must be buried with this."
Wow. That's a great story.
I
That's
know,
very
right?
supernatural.
Isn't that so
She
cool?
brings the old team back?
Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
man.
The surviving members, I actually really... So there was a Dybbuk Box movie made, but it's about the modern events, not this. I want to see this fucking story.
She goes and she gets all her friends.
Yeah.
Like,
And
not
I mean,
again.
look, it's super offensive. Obviously, the Dybbuk did not cause Kristallnacht.
Yeah,
but I would just love to see this because it's so great. She's like, yeah. So what about Trevor? I'm like, no, Trevor's dead.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Trevor. What
I
about
don't know.
Braden? Braden will do it. We know Braden's good for it. One last time, Braden.
And who else is left? Kyler?
Kyler. Paisley. What is this story?
We all know what really happened, right? The box ended up with Kevin Mannis, then Josef Netsky, then Jason Haxton. Netsky has dropped out of the conversation a while back, right? Mm-hmm. But Mannis and Haxton, they have this problem on their hands. What are they going to do with a cursed box that allegedly has some of the most evil energy in the world?
I know.
What?
Do you think they're going to give it to Zach Bagans?
Oh, yeah. Obviously,
Yeah.
you got to make it into a celebrity.
Yeah.
And it's with the Dybbuk Box's rise to stardom and the slow unraveling of the myth and lies that surround it that we will conclude our series next time.
Are you telling me that some of this isn't true?
I'm telling you that a lot of this is not true, actually.
Oh, wow. What?
And we'll talk about all of it at the end and what is true and what is not. I think our listeners probably have a decent sense of what is true and what is not at this point. Mm-hmm. But some of it might surprise you.
Interesting.
We talked about a lot of serious stuff in this episode. It kind of rubs me the wrong way, and I'll discuss it more next time, how the story of actual real suffering of people got co-opted into what amounts to a silly little ghost story.
Yeah.
I don't like the notion that all of that hate and poison can be explained away by, oh, it was an evil spirit. I think that does not do justice for the events that actually happened.
It takes the blame off of the ugliness that is brewing in these people.
Right. When you're talking about people like Lachlan, who were the arbiters of this hatred, we need to hold them responsible, not some mystical evil spirit. Like there were evil spirits, and we're talking about them now. You know,
Yeah.
Hitler was an evil spirit. Goebbels was an evil spirit. Lachlan was an evil spirit. You know, like they prompted this shit to happen. The SS and the Hitler Youth were the reason that Kristallnacht happened. But I'm getting ahead of myself. So
Yeah. No.
But we will address all of this in the next series. I just don't. It's really important to me that this doesn't feel too cavalier or too insensitive.
Right. It should not be any of those things. Yes. It's very horrific what happened. And
We'll be a little bit lighter next time.
Oh, will we?
Oh, yeah. Because we are going to talk about... We're finally going to bring the Haunted Museum and Zach Bagans into it. We'll talk about that investigation. We'll talk about the movie that got made and some of the unfortunate situations that might have surrounded the movie and Sam Raimi's production company.
Really?
During the process. Yeah.
Oh, very interesting.
Yep.
So as the Dybbuk Box rises to fame,
yes.
I do have one question.
Sure.
A serious question.
Yes.
Does it get a name, a star on the Hollywood Walk of Fame?
It really should have one.
I would love to see that. You just take the Dybbuk Box and just smash it into the
into the
little cement. Maybe like the two little handles. Because there has little hands, and you just kind of push them in, and you say, "You're a star now, kid."
Yeah.
Aw, that would be adorable.
You know what's funny, actually? So we'll talk about it next time. But Jason Haxton actually had copies fabricated of the box that may or may not have been used in the filming. Yeah. And Zach Bagans may or may not have used those during the filming of his episode of Ghost Adventures. Not when they do the opening, but just when they show the B-roll.
Oh, okay.
Because the legend surrounding all of this is anyone who even looks at the box has the potential of being cursed.
Damn, that's kind of like Annabelle, right?
Yeah, Annabelle's the same way.
Yeah.
We'll have to do something on Annabelle.
We gotta do something on Annabelle and haunted
dolls.
dolls. I mean, that just sounds...
Yeah, haunted dolls in general. I love haunted dolls.
Yeah, Okay, well, that's interesting. I mean... God, if we could be cursed by the things that we look at, that would be an interesting world.
That's the story, right?
Yeah.
But I think one of the wonderful, it's strange to use that word, but one of the wonderful things about having the opportunity to do this podcast is the fact that I think we can use things like the Dybbuk Box and my love of the paranormal, supernatural, Fortean phenomena, all of that stuff, and use it as a tapestry and a backdrop to talk about these very real conditions and events that have happened in history and how they are related to the events that are going on today.
Yeah, I mean, these are the things that you do not get told in high school. You don't get taught these things in high school. I'd never heard about the Voyage of the Damned and Kristallnacht, yes, but it was very much... It was just glossed over in a way.
I'm sure you didn't learn that Ernest von Rath might have been gay.
Well, I don't even know if I knew of his name. Like, I don't even think he was a player in any of it. Like, there's so much.
Yeah. And I'm always fascinated by these little, it's always the little events, you know?
Yeah.
That, so von Rath was shot in his office. That's, I mean, being shot is a big deal, you know, but that was the fuel to light the fire of Kristallnacht that became the deportation into the concentration camps that became the Holocaust, right? So all of that spawned from this one event that might have been a lover's quarrel, might have been a promise that was broken. You know, you remember you have this poor Herschel Greenspan who was in France and was Polish but was no longer Polish and wasn't French, and so he had no citizenship and might have been promised citizenship. This gigantic world-shaping event was the result of 5 gunshots. And that's a fascinating thing. I think.
It's always very scary how the world can change on the smallest axis point.
In an instant. Yeah.
Yeah. It's really, really nuts.
Yep.
Thanks for listening, everybody.
Yes, thank you so much for listening. Thanks to our supporters.
Yeah, thanks everybody. We might have some new listeners at this point, and we do have some new listeners at this point, and thanks for listening.
Yeah, thanks for listening. Thanks for checking out the podcast. Welcome.
Yeah.
And yeah, we will be back in our next episode with the conclusion of the Dybbuk Box.
Yay.
Be safe out there.
All right, bye.
Thanks for listening to Slaying Monsters, the Paranormal History Podcast. If you like the podcast, there's a couple ways to show your support. You can tell your friends, you can leave us a rating and review on your podcast platform, or you can head over to slayingmonsterspodcast.com and click on the Support Us button to leave a donation. For questions, suggestions, and other feedback, reach out to us, slayingmonsterspodcast@gmail.com, and stay up to date by following us on Instagram @slayingmonsterspodcast. Your support helps us grow, and we are truly grateful to have our listeners and community.